What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. In each episode, we have the distinct pleasure to talk to a brother or sister who is just doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor. And they share their God story, the ways in which God has been at work in their lives and the ways in which God has been at work in their work. And today, I have my sister, our sister, Kiami Davael. What's going on, sis?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I am excited and grateful to have this conversation, and I always there's nothing like an individual story, but I think there's something interesting about those who have been at what I would say a distinct walk of faith since early on in their life, and so my
Mhm.
brain goes back to Kentucky when you entered this world,
Yes.
and we're very clear early on that you had a call on your life. The words would be like, at 2 years old, you knew. And so I want to open
Mhm.
the floor with, who is Kiami Davael?
Whew, goodness. So Kiami Davael is an actress. She is a model. She is a producer. She's a writer. She's a singer. She is a daughter. She is a sister. She's a friend. Most importantly, she is a follower and extreme lover of Christ. And Kiami has grown a lot. Kiami has learned a lot. So Kiami has matured through her life and experiences. Kiami is very passionate about what she does, loves what she does, and loves to love on people.
Mm,
And Kiami loves to see others smile.
mm,
So that's a glimpse into who Kiami is.
mm. I love where you. I love where you obviously began, but also where you end. I love to see people smile, and sometimes I think when
Mhm.
you come around people who are gifted and divinely gifted as creatives, hearing people say bringing joy to the world or seeing people smile is a really powerful thing. What's interesting for many people who don't know
Absolutely.
your story, some may have come to know you via Matilda as Lavender, but your career
Yes.
started as a model
Mhm.
before an actress. And so, talk about that genesis,
Yes.
right? How does a child know or have a sense? And then, what was the convince? I want to know what that convincing process was with your moms. What did that look like?
So I think it's a blessing because I feel like we all have our gifts and talents, and I think we just have to be able to tap into them.
Mm,
And so I was just grateful and blessed at such an early age that I knew. I
mm,
think it was just at that time I didn't know that it was kind of God leading and directing me and placing that on my spirit. But that's exactly what it was. Now that I'm older, I understand that.
mm.
And so, essentially, with me watching, and I will always say Whitney Houston was my girl.
Newark, New
That
Jersey.
that was
Shout
it for
out
me.
Jersey.
Yes, yes. So that was my girl. So I remember watching her on her concerts and knowing them word for word, choreography, the whole bit. And I just would tell my mom, I want to be Whitney Houston. And she would always tell me, well, you can't do that, but you can be the best Kiami that you can be because there's only one Whitney and there's only one Kiami. So we can be the best Kiami that you can be. And I just kept telling her, okay, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And then when The Bodyguard came out, I just knew, okay, this is it. I'm watching her on screen, and I'm just loving the film mainly because she was in it. Not so much that it was a phenomenal film, which it
Yeah.
was. However, so just having realized that and it was just a feeling that came over me. I think once, I started watching these concerts and watching the films and just realizing that it was just some emotion that I still can't really put into words, to be honest. Maybe I can equate it to like a passion, just this desire and this burning. And I just knew, like, this is it. This is what I am supposed to do with my life. And I just told her, okay, this is what I want to do. I don't, and the best way a 3 year old can, or a 4 year old can describe it, that's what I did. And then she would have different individuals. Once I started, singing lessons, and my who I'm still very close with to this day. His name is Ron Browning, and he took and instructed like Patti LaBelle, Adjah. So he's been in the business for a very long time. So I started taking vocal lessons with him, and he would tell my mom, she's got it, whatever it is. I'm still not sure what that is, but okay. and and so then I actually, after starting vocal lessons with him, I ended up starting at a modeling school in Lexington, Kentucky called Images. And so I ended up going to modeling conventions, one in LA and one in New York. And in Los Angeles, I found my manager, who, again, I'm still very close with. And that's pretty much what happened. He signed me, and my mom says, okay, well, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And she packed up and she moved, and she sacrificed whatever she needed to sacrifice and moved me to Los Angeles. And here we are.
This is, I think when people hear this, but I think people may have heard what versions of the story of having a twinkle of promise and hope and seeing gifting, or just have a sense of knowing, and then packing up, moving their life to follow this dream. And we act like this isn't some like Abrahamic call out, because I can imagine for a young mother in Kentucky, and you have this young child where you're like, yeah, like people like, I know my child cute and like my child is talented, but to move my life, that is a big testament of faith. Now, for anybody listening who kind of knows and been rocking with me for a little bit, we know we're not going to get into a debate about the Bodyguard soundtrack and Waiting to Exhale. We're not here for violence this morning. we're not, it's debatable. Let's just say it's debatable, right? But to your point, that electricity, right? I couldn't imagine, there's certain people, and like learning and seeing from the young age your voice. And for me, like what captures me, if you turn off the camera, I know it's you by your voice, because I remember the voice.
Yeah.
So now you're in California. I'm just interested about like what the actual dynamic was in the home, because for you, I think faith was very important. Prayer with your mom's very important. But what was the genesis? When did you yourself fall in love? Because what you commonly hear is, I grew up down south, and so we all went to church. Everybody went to church, right? When did it become yours? When did you felt like it became yours?
So, similar story. I literally grew up in the church. So I had an early just indoctrination, shall I say, into, my faith and God and the word and just what that meant. And I remember when I was probably about maybe 11 or 12, I just looked at my mom and I said, I want to get baptized. And she was like, oh, okay. Oh, okay. My mother never christened me when I was younger, because she just wanted me to know for myself and make that decision for myself. And of course, no slight to anyone that does, as far as, the kids. That was just her personal decision when it came to me as a baby. So I think it was just a moment, and I think it's a very intimate moment when you just hear kind of God speak to you, and it's not loud. It's not really a loud speak, but it's a voice. I think that you hear, and it's just this feeling that just kind of comes over you. And we, of course, can equate that to the Holy Ghost just engulfing you. And I think at that moment, I knew, okay, this is extremely personal. This is extremely personal, and this is the moment that I'm going to say, I'm going to get baptized. I am going to read my Bible. I'm going to make sure that I have, my armor against the attacks of the enemy, and I'm going to make sure that my relationship gets strengthened by these actions. And it's not because I'm going to church or my mama's taking me. It's because it's something that now that I feel, that I know that God has spoken. It was almost like, even though He is omnipresent, it was almost as like if it was just He and I.
Mm, mm, mm,
It was that personal.
mm.
And at that moment, I knew, okay, let's take it that next step. Let's really do, that whole act of rededication, and not only, again, just the semblance of, getting baptized, but also just making sure that it's a complete life devotion, and understanding what that means, and what that looks like. And then the final piece of the puzzle, my father was an ordained bishop. So I kind of, yes, so a little bit of a PK as well.
A little bit. It's like you couldn't bob and weave around that if you wanted to, right? And I think
Right.
what I appreciate about you sharing this is that I think we're at the stage now. Many of our peers, you and I, are of the same, like kind of age, and I think one of the things that now, as friends, family members, colleagues, people are bringing children into this world. Sometimes sometimes you see an extreme where there's this quote unquote course correction, where they say, I'm not going to tell my child anything. I'm not going to bring him to church. I'm not going to do anything. Versus, there is a actual view to say, you know what, I still set the foundation. I'm called by God to raise my child to know, but my child will still have to go on their own journey of knowing and learning, and that's kind of the story that you have. There's this consistent theme I've heard and read for you. It's just been, and what you're saying now, knowing. It seems like you just had a surety to your walk in life, just like God obviously in all things, but in life. I want to talk about just sequencing, because a lot of times, typically, you will hear the story, particularly someone who has been given, I call like just the gifted voice. Typically, you'll hear that the music career would often come first. And then the kind of the audible, I'm branching out, I'm going into acting, I'm going into the TV, I'm into that. How did your faith, once you kind of took ownership of it, how did it inform just like your sequencing, the things you're taking on in your career when you did what you did, especially early on in your life?
So I think that, honestly, it was strange, because I feel like as I continued to grow, and as I continued to experience different things, my faith continued to grow. Because anytime I was, working, and anytime that I was on set, and anytime I had the opportunity to do what I love to do, the first thing that I always was, number one, instructed to do, and then once I was old enough to just kind of know that this is just common procedure, was for me to just have this attitude of gratitude, and just take this moment and just say, thank you, God, because it is aligned, and this is what you have destined for me to do, and I'm doing it. And I think that that has just helped me through the moments when there was rejection, and that did come, through my career. The jobs and roles that I just knew were absolutely perfect for me, but it wasn't my door to walk through. And so, knowing and being secure in that faith as I grew, helped me understand that, and I will always say this, and anytime most people ever hear me speak, I will always say what is meant for me will never miss me.
I
So,
see that IG post. You dropped that. Go ahead.
so I'm like, I stand, completely stand by that. So those moments of when things were a little uncertain, because I'm, kind of going through this transition of, I'm, 16, 17, 18. I'm a young woman now, but I look like I'm 11, 12. So it's this very weird artistic position to be in. And that was hard because the people weren't quite sure, as far as, the industry, if you will, what to do with me or where to place me, because I didn't look like a typical teenager, whatever you envision that to mean. However, I also, when I speak, you realize I wasn't 10 or 11. So I couldn't play somebody who was 10 or 11 or 12 because I don't sound that youthful. So that was a very difficult transition and a very difficult time. But even in still, I just had to hold on to the fact that God has not forgotten about me. He has not forsaken me. He has not left me. He has not put me where I am in this present moment, in this position for me to fall on my face. Nor has He given me the talents and the gifts for them to go unused. So during that transition, I just had to continue to remind myself of that. And even to this day, there are moments where there's rejection that comes part of it. It's rejection is never easy to deal with because there's that human element to us, of course. However, again, I do carry and understand. I trust Him, so I know that literally I am where I am supposed to be at this moment, to learn whatever I am to learn, to implement whatever it is that I have learned previously, to maybe sometimes even be still, to work on me, so that the next blessing that He has for me, that next door that is open, I will be equipped to handle it. So
This, I have so much admiration for you, because I think even as you break this down, I actually felt like I was on a journey with you, because I think even when we talk about just Matilda and Lavender, you were 8 years old. You were 8, right? And so that, and there's a flash that had went off as you were speaking around even then, right? How people judge my age, but that was a grace. God gave me that. And then as I navigated through my career, obviously now people going to want to mine you in like of your DNA, because they're like, oh my God, right? Like everybody would have made skin products now but like back in, but just literally, obviously navigating your career, this was attention. But then there's also this other piece of like, often in the Bible talks about even the Israelites when it was just like the daily man at giving you just what you need, the upper for the day, that you were really quote unquote, like getting in, or what's the term, killing what you eat, right? So every new project to the next project to the next project, the life of someone is just a very, very, it's a faith walk. So I have to ask you, even as you're navigating this, the questions of identity, right? And so right now, what I appreciate, I see you just like writing, even a couple of years back when you were like taking on Reckless and writing and starting a project. I'm gonna say, all right, she's writing, she's doing these things. All right, great. You're taking all the talents God has given you. And did you ever wrestle with just identity challenges of just like, who am I? When people would come up and know you by Matilda, know you by In the House, or know you by this, like, how did you manage your identity with God in ways that you're like, okay, I feel secure, versus you're trying to hold on to something that other people see you as?
Good question. You know what? I will say this. I am very, very grateful and very blessed because that wasn't honestly something I struggled with too much, to be honest. I and I think that I owe a lot of that honestly to my mother, because my mother, even doing working and being on set and X, Y, and Z, she kept me very grounded, and she kept me structured, not necessarily what's the word I'm looking for? Sheltered. Not necessarily that in a sense, however, but just very grounded and secure in who I was. And my mother was, and still is, very good at speaking life. So I think that really, really helped me, just having that foundation and that parent. She always says that God knew what kind of child she needed. And I always tell her, well, at the same time, he knew what kind of parent I needed. So he knew exactly what kind of parent I needed for the life that he was going to have me to lead, and the challenges that I would, face along the way. He knew that I needed that parent, that sometimes when I am, not always feeling at best or whatever the case may be, that will literally, because she knows me so well. I always tell her, you don't know my life, but she honestly knows me so well. So to be able to have that parent who can calm, and just by your energy can say exactly what needs to be said when it needs to be said. So having said that, with that foundation, I there wasn't much room for me to not know really who I was, because she made sure that I was firm and secure in that. Now, as I grew older, there were changes that I had to understand for myself, as far as just my own personal growth and development. And of course, those are type of things that, yes, you have someone like, your friends, or, my mom, for example, they can kind of help and coach you through that. But that really, those type of growths and things really become personal, I feel, or in my experience, between myself and God, because I needed to understand what this growing pain meant and what I was supposed to do with that. And that's not something that anybody else can tell me. That's the inner work that I have to do. So, in those moments, I guess I was a bit unsure of where I was to place what I was learning and what I was feeling, but never really unsure of who I was as a person. I think that there were moments in my life where, because of the things that I was learning, I was, maybe seeking validation from the wrong individuals, and maybe seeking acceptance from the wrong individuals. And that was strictly coming from what I was learning about me. And furthermore, that taught me even so much more about myself during that process. And I'm grateful, because even in those crazy situations, I could have easily lost myself, but God. So, um, but even in those moments, I still learned and realized that it was just a part of the journey of getting to know who Kiami is. And I'm still learning, still absolutely learning and evolving and growing, but there's an essence and a core to who I am that took some time to build. And then there are still some things that I acknowledge about myself that I feel can always still be work in progress. Because nobody's perfect. So, but in the journey along, my career, it's been those instances, but again, never instances where I've kind of lost me, so to speak. So,
I want to continue where you are in this conversation, because there's two things came up from what you said, just kind of the journey and the crisis. I may be off on this, but I think that you would be able to offer such a powerful perspective on this. I could just imagine just immense loneliness. Over throughout the years. One, there's the question of what are your intentions around me? Two, there is
Mhm.
the inconsistency, perhaps based on projects of where you are physically and where other
Mhm.
kids are.
Mhm.
I heard a kind of funny story about how like you had like the tutoring, the program, you had your math your math program you had to work on
Mm,
while you're on set and trying to get your
yes,
lines down.
yes.
And so it just I could see it as a very isolated, not saying it in a completely negative sense, but by virtue of it, isolated and not necessarily in a consistent community of friendship, right? So I want to take that piece of it, because you speak a lot about your mother and her being part of that community, that core. Um, but how did
Mhm.
you wrestle with community, friendship? What was God's words to you in that regard? How did God guide you in relationships? Because I can imagine it could be somewhat of a disconnected life at times.
So friendships have been a very, very interesting journey
Mm,
for me. I am, again, very, very thankful that I have my few, my really, really close knit and tight circle,
mm,
because I am a very I'm such a giver and I'm such a caring person, and there are times when people can attempt to take advantage of that.
mm,
So my conversation with God was and still is always discernment.
mm,
So that way I am able to really sit back and observe, who I see, not what I want to see, but who God is showing me that this individual is. And I will always say, when people show you their true colors, don't try to paint a different picture
mm,
with the colors that they're showing you.
mm. Yeah, that
This
was the
is this
bars.
is what it is.
Mm,
you know, um, I'm like, if it's black and white, don't see purple. Like
mm,
that's just not what it is. So I have, over the years, of course, had my share of disappointments and heartaches when it comes to my friendships and individuals that I thought were my friends, and um, me sharing different experiences with these individuals and then them turning around and doing the exact same thing. So I've learned to, as I've gotten older, to keep my circle very, very tight. I have people who you consider associates, but I do not have very many friends.
mm,
And I remember my great uncle, who lived to be 98,
mm.
would always tell me, he would call me half pint. He'd always say, half pint, you can count your real friends on one hand.
Mm,
Usually a few fingers, but on one hand. If you go into the other hand, you probably got too many. So, and that's not to say that I don't have true supporters in my life. However, again, have very few friends,
mm,
honestly. And I'm okay with that
mm.
because I know that those individuals that I do call my friends are my friends. It's tried and true. Like my best friend, we've been friends since I was 3 and she was 2. And so I'll be 35 this
Mm.
year in a few months.
If people don't
So you
believe you,
can
we
see
need
how
more. We
long.
need more people. We don't believe you. But continue.
I know, and nobody. I'm like, no, in 4 months I will be 35, which is
Mm,
hard to believe. But so that's how long she and I have been friends.
mm,
I have another best friend of mine who we have been friends since I was in the 6th grade.
mm,
So it's just these individuals, and another really good friend of mine who's like a big sister to me. I've known her for 10 years.
mm,
So, I mean, these are just individuals that have just my day ones, as you want to call them.
mhm, mhm,
So, and I thank God, because in those instances when I needed those individuals and I need, to be able to call these people to say, hey, I'm going through X, Y, and Z, pray for me,
mm,
that we can have that moment and we can pray. I can pray for them. We have the ability where we can be open and honest with each other, and there's no judgment. I can tell you what I need to tell you, and I don't have to worry about you running and telling 15 other people my business. And um, I know that you have my best interest at heart. I know that I can take the constructive criticism, and you can thump me across the phone and be like, "Sis, what are you doing?" And it's not out of, you being mean and malicious. I can share with you, my victories, and you will clap for me openly, clap for me, and vice versa. So I think that through the relationships and the friendships and the individuals that, and I don't necessarily call them a loss, it's just a lesson learned. So I take that, and I apply that to my life, and to what not to do next time, and to know what to look for next time. And again, it really just goes back to asking God for discernment, because it's not, because our human emotions can take over, and we can see something that isn't honestly there. So, that's why I just really, really ask God to just show me, and also preparing me to be accepting of what I see, because I may not like it, but to honestly be accepting of what I see, because you have showed me this is not your person. This is not the individual that you thought they were, who needs to be in your life, because you're not equally yoked. And that goes for friendships as well, not just relationships. I think friendships are equally yoked as well. So if we're not equally yoked, and we're not, have that same vibe and that same energy, I can love you, but just from over there.
we call
So
that from a middle of distance. We call that.
exactly. So yes.
This. I wanted to talk. I want to talk to you about the times we live in, but I think this dovetails into it beautifully, because this is one of the most underrated pieces of wisdom around friendship and discernment and the importance of it. Because if anybody scans social media if they had the time to scan for a couple hours, I'm not saying social media just runs by itself. Nobody's on for hours apparently, right? But clearly there are, right? And when people watch, it's all these like subliminal shots, you know what I'm saying? It's just like people who don't clap for you ain't right for you. You know what I mean? Like, it's like so much of life is navigating relationship and to the wisdom of your family member, and the wisdom that you carry. It's like if you end this life with 3 friends, you're rich, right? 3 best friends, you're rich. And so I just think that's so much wisdom. The question I have then becomes, even now, right? I'm thinking about the stories that are in you, the stories that you're writing, the songs, the music. How has what framework had God given you, and what's evolved over time for you around the stories you do tell, whether through music and songwriting, whether through just creatively the larger stories, because like as you and I talked about, like God is the greatest creative of all time. He's the greatest storyteller of all time. He's the best storyteller of all time. What stories are in you? That are in you now, obviously NDA, so you don't have to share everything. Number one, and number two, what's been your framework for the projects and things you create, the type of content that you create, and the type of content that you decide, this is great, but I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm just thinking extreme, but like, what's your framework to approaching what Kiami does and what Kiami Davael does not do?
Got you. So I definitely think that it's really, really important for me to, anytime that I hear of something like a project comes my way, or it's something that just kind of falls in my spirit, I let it sit for a little bit, and I really I honestly just pray about it, and I say, okay. So, for example, if there's a project that I am presented with, I read about it, script, and I say, okay, Let me just sit that there, because I want to make sure that I am making, number one, a rational decision, not an emotional decision. And then the second thing is, I want to make sure that this is a choice that is led by God and not Kiami. So, and then same token goes for if there's an idea that, just happens to be placed into my spirit. I say, okay, so I'll write it down so I don't forget, because I am literally the person that if I do not write stuff down or put stuff in calendars, it does not exist. Like, it just,
Yep.
it don't exist. Because I will forget, and somebody be like, "Oh, Kiami, I'll be like, "Oh, you sure right? I'm so sorry, because I didn't write it down. It's not in my calendar. My bad." So I make sure I write it down, because I need to let it sit. I need to let that marinate for a second, and then once it marinates for a second, I wait for the answer. If it's something that kind of falls in line with who I am as far as my ethics and my belief and my morals, I'll usually take that next step and have a conversation with my representation and say, okay, so now let's talk, schedule X, Y, and Z, the nuts and bolts and meat and potatoes, as they say, of this deal or whatever that is. Now let's talk about it, because I've had an opportunity to marinate on it. I've probably read the script 2 or 3 times to make sure that I'm understanding what is being asked of me, making sure again that this falls in line with who I am as an individual and my morals. If it does not fall within what I feel I stand for, my brand, me as an individual, I can't do it. Like, for example, I will tell anybody, you will not ever, ever in life catch me doing a film, a show where I play like possessed. You will never in your life.
No, don't go into the light, Caroline. We ain't doing that.
Hello. Ever, never, ever. And you know how they say never say never? Never. Because that just completely goes against what I stand for, my belief, my faith. I don't play with the devil, because he don't play with me. So there's that. So things like that, I know off top is just a no. So along that same line, if there's just things that just don't follow with what I believe and what I stand for, I'm not going to do it, because I have individuals who are watching me. I have little girls who will still watch my movie, and I have little sisters that I want to set a good example for. And they're, not so little anymore. One of my sisters will be 17, and then the other one will be 20 this year, but still. They're still my little sisters, and I have nieces, and so I want to make sure that I am setting a good example for them and for those little girls who, it's a representation. I am a representation of who they are. They can look at me and say, I see myself, because she's a little black girl who I can look in the mirror and relate to her. So that's really like my process, just making sure that it falls in line. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I can't sacrifice my morals. I can't sacrifice my beliefs for a check. I can't do that, because for me, my career and my artistry is bigger than just a check. It is my passion. It is what I know. It is all I know. And I can't allow myself to settle, because I know that the greats before me, such as Miss Ruby D, such as Miss Cicely Tyson, they did not settle. And I owe it to the generations that will come after me. These little black girls who will be amazing actresses, I owe it to them for them to say, well, she didn't settle, so I'm not going to either.
Mm.
So that's the process.
I want to be, I know we're coming on the tail end of this, and yesterday I was a part of a conversation, and the people were just talking about the beautiful divine pattern of God, and all throughout
Mhm.
there's this pattern and theme throughout the scripture. It's like one for many, because of the obedience of one, many will be blessed, right? Because of the disobedience
Yes.
of one or two, depending
Yes.
on what theology you have, many people will struggle, right? And so, but I hear that sense of that the gravity and the responsibility of one for many, that I think is the order and the picture of those who pattern their life after the one who was obedient, so that we may be blessed eternally. And I think that is so beautiful and encouraging. I just don't want to end that question with that, because I think that's, for me, I think sometimes you hear that question of like, what can't you do? You're an actress, if you're Christian. That's not so much just even the viewpoint. Part of it is just because you have a gift, you have the pen. Not everybody's in front of the camera, and then also is behind writing stories, right? Do you believe that, is there what stories, like, thematically, obviously I'm not going to put you on the spot there, but like, what do you, just from a content thesis perspective, what stories do you feel like God has put in you and said, in this world we need to have more stories about this? How has God been speaking to you around what's missing, and where your hand needs to contribute to the stories out there?
Got you. I think that one of the biggest things is, telling the truth about what it means to be an artist,
Mhm.
a black artist, and then a child artist that has now transitioned to an adult. And I think that we have amazing examples, of course, of black women who, are fantastic artists and, I mean, out here killing the game.
Mhm.
You have, Miss Viola Davis, Taraji P. Henson. I mean, we have, those are the first two that come to mind. But I mean, there's a plethora, and I'm loving it because it didn't used to be that way.
Mm.
So I'm loving seeing, that progression. However, there is a unique space for the black girl who is the child who is now an adult,
Mm.
and what that looks like.
Mm.
So it has been dropped on my spirit, and is something that I'm currently actually developing and working on as we speak, to be able to tell that story,
Mm.
what that looks like. And it came to me because there's so many people who will ask me, hey, Kiami, I want my daughter to be an actress. What does that look like? Like, what do I need to do? I'm just, my plan is I'm just going to take her to Los Angeles, and that's going to be it. No. No, that's not how that works. So I feel it is my duty and obligation to shed some light on that,
Mm.
and to be honest about what that looks like. And then furthermore, your child is gifted and talented. Okay, so when they become older, there's that transitional period. What does that look like for them? And the only individuals that can explain that are the individuals that have experienced it.
Mhm.
And so that story has not been told. So that is definitely something that, like I said, I am working on right now, because I feel like there's a space for it, there's a need for it. And it's just a level of honesty, and just being completely candid. It's a level of vulnerability that's a little scary and a little intimidating. However, it's truth.
Mm.
It is absolute truth, and it's what I have learned, on my journey, and what that transition looks like, and the individual is still remembering me from when you were 8 and 9. However, I'm not 8 or 9 years old anymore, and so it's a different type of conversation, a different type of energy that I'm going to bring to the table, because I'm not 9 years old. So that's definitely a big one that we're working on now. So
Fam, when I say that when that hits, play gonna watch that,
right.
because I just to your point, the lens you'll be able to offer, and I'm actually just you have you're so other minded, and it is in everything you say, you think about others, and so even with the obedience and the blessings for many, your work and thinking about the young woman or young boy, young child, young man who will be navigating that. That is something that you could speak to with precision. That will probably save many
Absolutely.
and help to keep many. Um, Lastly, I have to ask the question about your rhythm. I think coming from someone with a music background, they think about the rhythm staccato, like the you can almost feel as though sometimes your rhythm, your time changes based on your projects, how long they are. And so,
Hmm.
what does your rhythm? What is your ideal rhythm with God? If you had a day to yourself, how do you feel most connected with God? If you designed your day, Google Calendar wrote it out, it
Hmm.
was perfect. What would that be for
Hmm.
people?
Oh goodness, I definitely think starting my day off with my morning prayer and my meditation, my affirmations, and setting my intentions for the day
Mm.
is a huge part for me. And then going out to move, so be that taking a walk. Right now, not so much of the gym because it's the whole panorama out here. So so we don't necessarily do the gym, but just something so that way I'm moving,
Mm.
getting my body moving, making sure that I'm health conscious in that, because I do believe that a part of my faith walk and my walk with God is making sure that I take care of the temple that He provided to me while I
Mm.
have it.
Mm.
Um, so doing that, and then really just, if it was just a day of nothing, it would honestly just be a day of just reflection, a day of just planning, a day of just gratitude and saying and literally writing down. I'm big on writing and like journaling.
Mm.
So big on just kind of writing down where I'm at and what my next step is and the action plan that God and I are going to take to get there, because I'm going to get there.
Mm.
I just need to listen and have a game plan as to how I'm going to get there. My mother always says I don't have to worry about the how. I just know it's going to get done.
Mm.
So, in that kind of same sentiment, I don't necessarily want to worry about the how, but just knowing that it is going to get done. So that would probably be, I would have to say, if I really had no meetings, no anything, that would probably be my day, and just the gratefulness, because and just being present in that moment. And I know, we all have our own struggles, our own insecurities, our own anxieties of sorts and things like that. And it's important to just, focus on the mental health and having that constant attitude of gratitude, because I truly, truly believe that that is the way that we get to the next level, being present and grateful for where you are at this moment, even if it's not necessarily where you see yourself or where you feel like you may want to be at that moment, but still being grateful because your heart is still beating, which means you still have purpose.
Amen.
You still have a destiny to fulfill. So that would probably be my day, and just focusing on that. So
Mm. Kiami Davael, I am, I think
yes,
on
sir.
behalf of the brothers and sisters who hear this and who watch this, thank you. I think in a space,
Of
in an
course.
expanse that people from the outside in and perhaps experience from the inside out, where it seems that people are there to serve self. To have someone who is a beholder, beacon of God's light, who is looking to shine light in dark places, to tell stories that remind people of the great hero of all of our stories, but also to serve people in ways and serve others in ways that come after you, in ways that is like this one obedience for many. I thank God for you in your life. I said it offline today. I was like, "Yo, she's gonna be my friend for life." I just your spirit and your spirit is
That's
amazing.
it.
And so just know that we will champion you, and we are behind you and every and all that you will do to serve others. And so, how could people find you? How could people support you online? Tell them where to find you.
Sure. So I appreciate you. Also, thank you so much for your kind words. I really, really do appreciate that, and I thank you as well for your work and for allowing God to use you in the way that He is using you. So we don't see a lot of that, and it's not an easy road per se. Being in a believer out loud. However, I am grateful for the example that you are setting as well. So I just wanted to go on the record and say that too. So as far as my social media, I have Instagram, which is official Kiami Davael, and I am also on Twitter, Kiami Davael as well. And I am working on my website, so I'm getting that revamped. So as soon as I get that, I will be posting, of course, my actual website on my Instagram. So
most deaf. I know people. There are many people who know where you're at already, but there are many more people who will find you. And so, my sister, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are loved, and we're grateful.
Of course, thank you.